The first thing Sarah noticed was the sound of the wind tearing across the hillside, as if the mountains of Queenstown were whispering ancient stories that only those who arrived broken could hear. The car stopped in front of the wooden cabin, and the rural silence enveloped her like a cold blanket. She took a deep breath. 31 years old, a writing career that seemed to have lost its luster, and a recent divorce that had left her hands empty and her chest full of echoes. The door to the attached inn opened with a soft click. Chloe appeared on the threshold, 30 years old, skin golden from the New Zealand sun, brown hair tied in a practical bun, eyes of a green that resembled a river after the rain. There was in her something of the ground and the sky at the same time, a way of occupying space without asking for permission, simply by belonging. "Welcome," she said, with a calm smile and a light accent. "You must be Sarah." Her name pronounced that way, soft, almost a shelter, brought an unexpected warmth to Sarah's face. She nodded, adjusting her thick coat. The temperature bit her skin through the gaps in the fabric. The air smelled of pine, of wet earth, of a lit fireplace in some neighboring house. Chloe picked up the larger suitcase effortlessly, and walked along the stone path. Sarah followed, noticing the breadth of the landscape, the white light spilled over the distant mountains, the delicacy with which Chloe avoided the puddles as if she knew every irregularity of that ground. Inside, the cabin smelled of freshly waxed wood and coffee. A stone fireplace, folded wool blankets, books scattered like good intentions. The window panes framed the world in living screens, where the fog danced lazily. Chloe pointed to the table. "I left fresh bread and honey from a local beekeeper here. If you need anything, the main house is right over there." She indicated with her chin, a simple, effortlessly intimate gesture. "And if you want to walk later, I can show you the lookout trail. The sky looks promising today." Sarah's body relaxed a millimeter. For weeks she had been living on alert, like someone fearing bad news at any moment. The discreet warmth from the fireplace met her face, and she removed her right glove, letting her skin feel the temperature of the place. A memory crossed her mind, once familiar hands, the coldness of a hurried goodbye. She pushed the thought away, like someone closing a window before a storm. "Thank you," she replied, her voice low, almost secret. "I needed a place like this." Chloe observed without intruding, like someone reading the margins before touching the text. "The mountain is generous with those who know how to listen," she said. "And you seem to know." There was a comfortable silence. Sarah leaned her suitcase in the corner and, for a moment, felt her own heart slow down. She noticed Chloe's hands, firm, with small marks of work. She also noticed the attentive way she tilted her head when listening, as if each sentence had a specific weight to be respected. Small details, almost nothing, but they lingered. Outside, the light changed tone like a long breath. Sarah approached the window. The landscape seemed larger than any thought that tormented her. She smelled the coffee that still lingered in the air. Her back, always tense, gave way a little. "I'll let you get settled," said Chloe, already taking a step back. "Later, I'll stop by to see if everything is all right. If you're up for it, we can walk." Sarah wanted to say yes, but the word got stuck on the way between her throat and her courage. She nodded with a smile. When she was alone, she opened her suitcase and touched the spine of the notebook where she had been trying to write a new beginning. The blank pages reflected a timid glow. She sat at the table, heard the wall clock mark some arbitrary hour, and let the cabin embrace her. She wrote half a dozen lines and stopped. There was a good hum in her chest, not euphoria, not pain, something in between. She drank water, walked to the door, and opened it. The cold air kissed her face. In the distance, she saw Chloe crossing the yard with a bucket of feed. The fluffy coat highlighted her strong shoulders, and a stubborn strand had escaped her bun. Sarah laughed without knowing why. In the afternoon, the sky opened into a translucent brightness. Chloe returned, knocking lightly on the door. Sarah tied her hair in an improvised ponytail, put on her boots. They walked side by side, without urgency. The ground yielded softly under their soles, and the smell of wet grass rose like a childhood memory. The first words were simple, like someone warming up their tongue before singing. "Do you write novels?" asked Chloe. "I try to write about what the heart avoids," replied Sarah, half joking, half hurt. "And do you succeed?" "Sometimes. Today, not much." Chloe nodded, her gaze landing on the horizon where the lake mirrored the sky. "Sometimes we need to be silent for the story to appear." They continued. The trail narrowed, snaking through trees, rocks, and shadows. A bird cut the air with a short cry. Sarah felt her blood running faster, her body remembered it was still alive. She noticed the rhythm of Chloe's breathing, steady, reliable. She noticed the distance between them, small, but honest. When the trail required a firm step on a wet rock, Sarah's boot slipped a centimeter. Chloe's hand appeared, instinctive. The touch was brief, but whole. Skin on skin, warmth biting cold. Sarah raised her eyes, and there, for a second, the world reduced to the green within the green. "Are you all right?" Chloe's voice came softly, in the exact tone that neither infantilized nor invaded. "I am," she replied, still holding onto a thread of air. "Thank you." They let go at the same time, as if they had rehearsed it. There was no embarrassment, there was an invisible thread crossing the space between shoulder and shoulder. The wind blew stronger, and the smell of impending rain mixed with that of the earth. They reached the lookout. The valley stretched out open, the mountains like columns of an ancient temple. The light touched the surfaces with long fingers. They stood in silence, and it was not an empty silence, it was the kind of silence that knows the name of things. "When I was a child," said Chloe, without taking her eyes off the horizon, "my grandfather said the mountain keeps what we entrust to it. It gives it back when we are ready." Sarah smiled. She remembered the day when, still a teenager, she discovered that writing was another way of breathing. She also remembered a table set for two and an empty chair. She felt the familiar pang, but more distant, as if the landscape had diluted it. "And what did you entrust to the mountain?" she asked. Chloe thought for a moment. The fear of leaving and the fear of staying. She then turned to Sarah, not fully, just enough. "And you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and light at the same time. Sarah brushed her hand over her coat, seeking warmth where there was already warmth. "The fear of feeling again." Chloe nodded, unhurried, like someone who respects every layer of an answer. The wind played with the loose strand of her hair. Sarah found herself increasingly noticing small things, the curve of her smile on just one side, the timid freckles on her nose, the way she adjusted her coat sleeve before speaking. Noticing became a verb full of meaning. They began to descend. The trail demanded attention, and that brought them closer. In a narrower section, Chloe went ahead to clear a path through the wet branches. An elastic branch swung back and almost touched Sarah's face. Chloe raised her hand, holding it back, and the proximity brought a clean scent, a mix of rain and something citrus, perhaps lavender. Sarah's heart accelerated without spectacle, just truth. Her body, which for months had been a house of absences, registered presence. Back at the cabin, the late afternoon spilled through the windows, gilding the wooden floor. Chloe lit the fireplace with gestures that spoke of practice and care. Sarah watched the flames being born, small and stubborn, until they took shape. The crackling of the firewood was a sound she didn't know she needed. Chloe left a mug of tea on the table, chamomile with honey, and took half a step back. "May I?" she asked, indicating the armchair opposite. "Of course." They sat down. The heat drew another layer of comfort in the air. The conversation flowed effortlessly, sliding from light topics to confessions no one promises to make. Sarah talked about her first book, the fear of the second, the marriage built on the idea of who she thought she should be. She didn't give details, she didn't need to. Chloe spoke of the inherited inn, the full summers, the winters of good silence, the simple pleasure of seeing someone arrive tense and leave lighter. "You have that effect," said Sarah, surprised at her own frankness. "You make things feel more possible." Chloe smiled, almost shyly this time. "Maybe it's the mountain. Or the tea. Or you," she let out, and the word stayed there, beating its wings. They were in no hurry. The fireplace chewed firewood, the clock ticked without imposing. Outside, the night began to be born, and the first stars appeared like cracks of another story. Sarah noticed her hand resting on the arm of the chair, relaxed. She also noticed her own body leaning slightly forward when Chloe said something quieter. Small gravities, discreet and inevitable. "How long will you stay?" asked Chloe, in a tone that was interest and care, not possession. "Long enough to remember how to breathe," replied Sarah, surprising herself once again. "Then," said Chloe, with a sweetness that seemed like an invitation to a future, "tomorrow will be sunny. If you like, I'll take you to a place almost no one knows. The water is icy, but the boldness is worth it." The word boldness warmed Sarah's stomach. She imagined trails, lakes, laughter, the feeling of skin chilled by cold and warmed by proximity. She imagined, and the simple act of imagining moved her a step back towards herself. The wind hit the window. The fireplace flame leaned, alive. Sarah got up to fetch some blankets and handed one to Chloe. Their fingers brushed for a moment, a near nothing that her body registered as a turned page. There was nothing wrong with it, there was respect, care, a light humor that supported the afternoon. Desire appeared without fanfare, not like a high flame, but like an ember that promises long duration. "Thank you," said Chloe, pulling the blanket over her legs. The fabric scratched slightly, a rough comfort. "Do you write better with the smell of smoke?" "I think I write better when someone reminds me that the world is larger than my memories," returned Sarah, without looking too directly, so as not to give away too much. The silence that followed was of a new kind between them, not the silence of someone who doesn't know what to say, but of someone who has already said the essential. Outside, the night was complete. A dog barked in the distance. The cabin's wood creaked, adjusting to the cold. Chloe placed the empty mug on the table and stayed for a while with her fingers touching the handle, like someone weighing a decision. She raised her gaze. It met Sarah's at a point between the flames and the dark windowpane. "Tomorrow, then," she said, in a thread of voice that contained promise and prudence. "But, if you feel it's not the time, tell me." "I will," replied Sarah, and the commitment, though small, seemed enormous. They stayed a few more minutes, each within her own good thought. When Chloe got up to leave, the cold entered through the door, and with it the clear perception that something had changed. It was not a revolution. It was a tide rising one finger at a time. Chloe stopped at the doorframe, as if she had forgotten something. She turned, the rebellious strand loose again, and this time her smile carried a carefully folded question inside. "Sarah," she began, and the name came out like someone turning on a light in the hallway. "Tomorrow I'll show you the lake. But today." The sentence hung suspended, between the warmth of the fireplace and the breath of the night, while their eyes lingered a second longer than they should have, seeking the answer that perhaps neither of them was ready to give. Dawn arrived like someone untying a knot. The light rose behind the mountains, flowing down the slopes until it touched the cabin with cold fingers. Sarah woke before the first bird, recognizing in her own body a kind of good anxiety she hadn't felt in years. The shower water hit her shoulders, awakening muscles that yesterday had remembered trails and breaths. In the kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee already lived in the air, and for a moment, she thought it was a memory. It wasn't. Someone had left a pot on the porch, wrapped in a linen cloth, along with a note, "The lake waits better with coffee. See." Sarah smiled to herself, the kind of smile the mouth cannot contain. Chloe arrived shortly after, knocking lightly on the door, enveloping herself in the steam from the hot mug Sarah held with both hands. Her coat was dark with dew on the shoulders. Her eyes, lighter in the morning light, carried a calm joy. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. "Like someone who was on loan to a landscape," said Sarah, half joking, half sincere. They walked. The trail to the lake diverged from the main one and sank between twisted trees, where fungi colored some old bark amber. The air was sharp, perfumed with eucalyptus and earth. Chloe walked ahead, clearing the way with a wooden stick, pointing out birds, tracks in the mud, details only trained eyes see. She spoke softly, like someone who respects a sanctuary. Sarah followed her, attentive to the steps, but also to the way she existed in the world, the cadence of her knees bending on the descents, the firmness of her hands when pushing a branch aside, the involuntary delicacy of blowing a strand from her face. "My grandfather said the lake changes color according to the sky's mood," Chloe told her. "Today it should be between steel and mirror." "And you?" ventured Sarah, feigning lightness. "Do you change color according to the day's mood?" Chloe smiled without turning her face. "Lately I've been feeling, less stone, more water." It was a simple answer, but something in it hit Sarah squarely, like someone finding a shortcut to say big things. The sound of their boots in the mud created a rhythm that both of them accepted. In a narrow section, the path fell away in irregular steps. Sarah slipped enough to lose control of her body for a second. Chloe's hand came, warm, secure. The world made a small silence. Their fingers lingered a little longer than necessity demanded. Sarah thanked her in a breath. They continued. The lake appeared suddenly, in a gap between the trees, a steel mirror, as predicted, with a ceiling of clouds racing in the wind. The water was of a visible cold, a blue cold. Chloe took off her gloves and dipped her fingers in, laughing at the shock. "I told you the boldness was worth it," she said, her voice bitten by the air. "There's a spot over there where the sun hits better, let's go." They went to a flat rock. Chloe sat down first, pressing her palms against the granite. Sarah stood, absorbing the vastness. The wind messed up her ponytail, and Chloe stretched out her hand in an automatic gesture, like someone offering to help tie up a thought. "May I?" she asked. "You may." Chloe's fingers passed over the elastic, over the hair, with the care of not pulling. The touch almost didn't exist, but it did. Sarah felt her scalp prickle under the cold and under something else. She tied her hair. When she turned, the two were too close, and that was not a mistake. The air carried a question that no one rushed. Chloe lowered her eyes first, like someone respecting a boundary. She withdrew her hand, and the presence remained there, firm. "I want to show you something else," she said. When the wind does this, she indicated the trembling surface of the water. Sometimes the sun paints silver on the bottom. "It looks like someone stirred the sky with a spoon." Sarah gave a small laugh. "You talk about this place like you love a person." "Maybe it is a person, just a very large one," returned Chloe, and it was impossible not to like the image. They sat down together. The silence was one of contemplation, then of accommodation, then it turned into conversation. Sarah spoke of her childhood in Portland, of how libraries saved her from long days. She confessed that, at the end of her marriage, she had learned the map of a body and lost the map of herself. Chloe listened like someone who knows how to be still. She said she had loved once with the haste of someone who confuses flame with home, and that, when the other left for Auckland, to be greater, she stayed, feeling small and, at the same time, anchored. "The mountain held me," she said. There was no bitterness, there was just a clear outline of what had been. The sun tore a gap between the clouds, and the lake gained a silver stripe that really did look like a spoon stirring the sky. The leather of their boots creaked as they stood up. The way back was lighter, but the good tension did not diminish. It spun, reinvented itself in other parts of the body, in the forearm, in the pit of the stomach, in the nape of the neck. At one point, a fine rain began, almost a caress. Chloe raised her hood and, without thinking, pulled up Sarah's to cover her hair. The simple gesture carried a silent intimacy, and it was the kind of care the eyes do not forget. In the cabin, the smell of firewood filled the room again, the blankets returned texture, and Sarah felt the world could fit into an afternoon. Chloe helped untie the muddy boots, trying not to touch skin where she shouldn't, but touching. Her fingers slipped over Sarah's ankle, and the electricity was calm and whole, the kind that doesn't apologize for existing. They both laughed at the excess mud, at the sound of the wet leather, at nothing specific. They laughed because they were learning the body of a happy afternoon. "Will you stay for dinner?" asked Sarah, and then wondered if her tone sounded too casual or too compromising. There was no middle ground. Chloe looked at the window, the shadows lengthening on the porch, the sky preparing a full-bodied blue of night. "Only if I cook," she said. "I have a pumpkin soup recipe that always saves winters." "Then save me," replied Sarah, and there was more inside the sentence than the soup could solve. They cooked together. The noise of the processor, the sound of the knife on the cutting board, the sweet scent of pumpkin mixing with thyme and garlic. Sarah tasted the soup from the wooden spoon and blew carefully, offering it to Chloe like someone offering a secret. Her lips touched the wood with delicacy, and the way she closed her eyes for a second was a kind of prayer. The old kitchen radio picked up a station with soft music, strings, a piano coming from afar. Sarah extended her hand, in an impulse she didn't know where it came from. "Dance with me." Chloe hesitated for a moment that lasted long enough to become a memory. Her hand fit into Sarah's hand. Their bodies met in a middle ground that both respects and pulls. It wasn't dancing, it was a conversation in another language. The blanket on the arm of the chair fell to the floor with a Sunday sound. The world lost its edges. Sarah's heart, which for months had been beating in survival mode, found a new rhythm. Her cheek brushed against Chloe's hair. The scent of lavender returned, now mixed with warm broth and firewood. For a second, Sarah thought time had decided to live there. They stopped at the same time. They laughed through their noses, putting their feet back on the ground. Chloe moved away half a palm, enough for the room to regain its normal size. "Better we serve it before it burns," she said, and the sentence, instead of cutting, glued. They ate on the sofa, bowls balanced in their hands, the fireplace casting light on their legs. They talked about small things, the noise of the Kias in the morning, the story of the neighbor who swore he saw a white deer last winter, and these small things functioned as bridges to large places they still didn't dare cross. When the soup was finished, Chloe left her bowl on the table and stared at the fire like someone looking for the exact word. "How long has it been since you felt like writing?" she asked. Sarah took a long time to answer. She rested her chin on her knee, hugged her own legs, like someone preparing courage. "Since before the end." She paused. But today, at the lake, it was as if someone opened a window inside. Chloe nodded, and there was pride in the gesture, as if a part of her had something to do with the window. "Sometimes we just need another season," she said. "Winter is also a way of blooming, if we accept the idea." The hours moved on. The cold tightened. Sarah brought chocolate and 2 small glasses. The sweet melted in her mouth with a good sadness. When Chloe decided to leave, no one wanted to call it night when what was unfolding still felt like a promise. At the door, the wind tried to enter. Chloe held the doorframe like someone holding a boat. "Tomorrow," she said, as if the word were a place. "I can come by early. There's a section of the valley that turns golden at 9:12. It requires care to see." 9:12, repeated Sarah, memorizing the number as if it were a password. 9:12, confirmed Chloe, and the echo came accompanied by a smile that already knew the way back. They stood there for a second that became long. Chloe's face gained the outline of the flame behind Sarah, and her skin turned almost amber. Their eyes met in an interval without surface. The distance was so small the air seemed denser. She knew she could tilt her head and cross over. She also knew she didn't need to, that the grace of the path was in respecting each step. Even so, her body leaned forward half a centimeter, almost involuntarily. The rhythm of their breathing changed, and the house noticed. Outside, a branch scratched the window, producing a dry sound that returned the world to the room. Chloe laughed, low, like someone thanking chance for reminding them there is time for everything. She took half a step back, without breaking the thread. "Good night, Sarah." "Good night, Chloe." The door closed slowly. Sarah leaned her forehead against the wood, feeling the vibration of the wind on the other side, the vibration of her own chest on the inside. She looked at the clock, 9:11. She smiled to herself, already knowing where she would be the next minute. In the room, she opened the notebook. The words came effortlessly, as if they had only been waiting for the right day. She wrote about a lake stirred by a sun spoon, about hands that learned new measurements, about a dance that wasn't even a dance and was enough. When she stopped, she heard footsteps on the porch. A light knock on the door. Her heart beat like someone recognizing a beat in a song. "I forgot my beanie," said the voice from outside, and just the timbre was a small campfire. Sarah crossed the room with the blanket still on her shoulders, opened the door a crack. Chloe's eyes tried not to intrude, but entered anyway, because that is what eyes do when they know the way. The beanie was indeed there, on a hook to the side. "Thank you," said Chloe, accepting it. 9:12. 9:12, returned Sarah, and the number became a promise of a whole day. The wind shook the edge of the roof, and the two instinctively looked up. When they looked back, the distance had shrunk again, on its own. Chloe raised a finger, like someone marking an idea in the air, and smiled with the corner of her mouth. "I was going to say something, but—" "Say it," asked Sarah, in a thread. Chloe bit her lip lightly, looking for the right word. It started to come out, soft, before the night swallowed the rest. The Golden Valley at 9:12 seemed like a secret only two people shared. The light descended in blades between the clouds, and the grass still carried the shine of resisting droplets. Sarah arrived with her hair tied in a careless way, her coat open enough for the cold air to remind her skin that it was alive. Chloe was already waiting for her, leaning against a wooden fence, her hands in the pockets of her moss-green coat, a wool scarf loose around her neck. The smile came first, but there was something new in the way she adjusted the scarf, a simple gesture that revealed a piece of collarbone. It wasn't an accident, it was naturalness. And yet, it was the kind of detail that sets off silent bells. "I thought you were going to be late," said Chloe, joking. "I trained with old clocks," replied Sarah. "They always arrive a minute before time." They walked side by side, and the trail today seemed clearer, as if it too had been waiting. The wet leaves crackled differently, and a scent of crushed undergrowth rose discreetly. Sarah felt her body attentive, as if every sense had gained volume. She noticed the sound of the fabric of Chloe's coat, the way her boot met the earth, the cadence of that sure step. When the trail narrowed and required them to walk almost shoulder to shoulder, Chloe's arm brushed lightly against Sarah's ribs. It was a touch that could have been nothing, but it wasn't. It stayed there, reverberating, like when a small stone falls into an absolute lake. "I brought something," said Chloe, taking a small, old pocket-knife from her pocket. "For opening oranges. I think the sun deserves a fruit." They sat on a flat rock and, for a moment, they were just two people peeling an orange in the middle of the world. Chloe cut the peel with precision, and the citrus scent spread, clean, like a beginning. Sarah accepted a segment. The flavor burst on her tongue, acidic and sweet. There was juice on both their fingers. Chloe raised her hand, instinctive, offering a cloth, their fingers brushed again. This time, they lingered a second longer. No one withdrew their hand in a hurry. Sarah took a deep breath, and the breath came out as a warning to herself, attention, this is real. The wind turned and brought with it a sharper cold. Chloe took off her scarf and, in a kindness born ready, wrapped it around Sarah's neck, coming close enough for the scent of lavender and wood to touch her skin. Like this, she said, adjusting the ends. Her fingers touched the base of her neck, and the shiver came exact, obedient. Better. Better, Sarah replied, her voice a tone below usual. The walk continued to a section of rocks where the river narrowed and sang louder. Chloe stopped on a narrow bank and, with a free boldness, unfastened 2 buttons of her coat. The light sweater underneath had a discreet neckline that let her skin meet the morning light. There was no pose, only comfort in her own body. Sarah found herself looking away out of modesty, and then looking back, like someone learning to see without apologizing. When I was little, I thought this river sound was the sound of the world riding, said Chloe, pointing to the clear water. Today I think it's the opposite, it's the world erasing the excess, leaving only what matters. And what matters? Sarah asked, knowing the answer was important. Chloe took her time, like someone who doesn't want big words to come too easily. What we can touch without breaking. There was something in that phrase that found a home in Sarah. The marriage that ended, the empty pages, the attempt to hide from herself, all of it rearranged for a moment on a simpler shelf. She approached the water, crouched down. The cold rose in waves from the ground. Chloe crouched down too, so close that their shoulders exchanged heat. They stayed like that for a while, quiet, watching the river pass. They returned before noon, carried by the wind that now blew with haste. At the inn, Chloe suggested they make sandwiches and go up to the lookout above the cabin. Sarah agreed, and the kitchen became territory of small provocations, elbows that bumped, a knife fighting for the cutting board, smiles that rose and did not regret. Chloe opened a bottle of cider. Sarah pretended to toast, but it was just an excuse to touch the glass at the same time. They laughed at the childish gesture that had nothing childish about it. At the lookout, the sun alternated shadows like someone playing hide and seek. They ate looking into the distance. The conversation gained another temperature, light, but interspersed with silences that asked for care. Sarah told of a time she almost abandoned everything to cross the country without a destination. Chloe spoke of a storm that tore off half the inn's roof and how the neighbors showed up, each with a hammer and a joke. More laughter. And, suddenly, a pause. The wind made Sarah's scarf dance. Chloe, in an impulse that didn't ask for permission because it brought delicacy by nature, held the fabric and, without realizing, the tips of her fingers touched the skin there, below the ear. The skin stored the memory like someone storing a password. "You look beautiful when you look far away," said Chloe, almost distracted, like someone commenting on the weather. Then she realized the weight and added, quietly, "I mean, you always look beautiful." Sarah didn't rush to answer. She closed her eyes for a second, like someone searching for the exact point of a word in her chest. When she opened them, the whole world seemed to have taken 2 steps back, leaving only the 2 of them in the center. "I needed to hear that," she said, simply. "And now I don't know what to do with the information." Chloe laughed, the laughter cutting the tension in the right place. "We can put it on a shelf and look at it from time to time," she suggested. "Or leave it on the table, to use every day." The afternoon descended with a milder light, and they decided to go back. In the cabin, the heat from the fireplace welcomed them like a certainty. Chloe approached the stereo, dusted off a forgotten vinyl record and put it on. An old voice filled the air, scratchy with time, perfect. Sarah took off her coat. The thin boat-neck sweater let the beginning of her shoulders breathe. Chloe noticed, and her gaze didn't flee, it stopped there, just enough for Sarah to know. It wasn't invasion, it was attention. "Dance with me again?" asked Sarah, surprised at her own courage. Chloe came. Their hands met in the middle of the room, a little unsure, like someone relearning an alphabet. Sarah's body leaned against Chloe's lightly, testing limits. The music led the first turn. After that, it was just presence. Sarah's cheek brushed against Chloe's temple. Her heart accelerated, not as an alarm, but as confirmation. Chloe ran her hand over Sarah's back in a gesture that asked for nothing, it just said, "I'm here." And it was enough for everything. "Can I tell you something without ruining it?" whispered Chloe. "You can. I've felt like kissing you since last night." The world stood still, as if the walls had held the air so as not to disturb. Sarah closed her eyes, not fleeing, but remaining. "Me too," she said, and the phrase came out with an honesty that surprised her. "But I'm afraid of breaking again." Chloe leaned her forehead against hers, and the proximity was a whole place. "Then we'll go carefully," she promised. "One step at a time. You talk, I listen. If it's too much, we go back. I'm in no hurry." Their hands, still holding, squeezed. There was no other sound besides the old voice on the vinyl and the crackle of the burning wood. Chloe tilted her face a millimeter. Sarah found herself doing the same. The first touch was in the breath, then on the lips, a touch almost like paper, a kiss that asked more than it affirmed. It was soft, brief, full of room for the after. The hands didn't rise, didn't demand. They stayed. When they pulled away, their eyes took the exact seconds to say that it had been real. "Is everything all right?" Chloe asked, in a tone that was a shelter. "It is," Sarah replied, and the word came with a sweet relief. "It really is." They smiled like people sharing a good secret. The music ended, and the record player needle whispered static. Chloe went over, lifted the needle, flipped the record. Sarah watched the gesture with a new tenderness, this ability to make small things seem essential. "Will you stay for tea?" asked Sarah, and smiled at the echo of the previous words. "I'll stay for whatever fits," Chloe replied, joking, but there was truth in the phrase. They prepared hot water, tea leaves released their scent in the kitchen, and the steam drew figures in the air. They talked again, now with the kind of lightness that follows the first right step. Still, the tension remained, renewed, working inside like a silent tide. When the night arrived completely, Chloe stood up slowly. "I should go," she said, and the "should" sounded like care, not obligation. "Tomorrow promises a clear sky." At the door, the cold welcomed them again. The scarf that was previously around Sarah's neck slipped a little, and Chloe adjusted it with her fingers, pausing long enough for their eyes to seek each other in the middle of the gesture. They didn't kiss again. They didn't need to. The kiss from before still lived in the room, stored like a contained flame. "Good night," said Chloe. "Good night," returned Sarah, and the word carried a desire for tomorrow. Chloe went down the step, and the sound of her footsteps on the porch mixed with the wind. Before turning the corner, she stopped, as if remembering something. "Sarah," she called, without approaching. "If at any point I go too fast, you pull me back, okay?" "Okay. And if I hide, you call me by name. Deal." Chloe disappeared around the bend, and the night took a second to close the void. Sarah leaned her head against the doorframe and let her chest follow the music that had already ended. She returned to the room like someone returning from a dive and, before putting out the fireplace, opened the notebook. The words came again, about oranges and promises, about fingers that know the temperature of care, about a kiss that ignited a slow and sure fire. She wrote until she felt her hand tire and, when she looked up, she noticed through the window a light on in the main house. She imagined Chloe there, maybe drinking water, maybe smiling to herself in the same way. The night seemed to promise more than it could deliver, and, for the first time in a long time, Sarah liked that feeling. She turned off the lights, let the house breathe darkness, and, as she closed the bedroom door, there was still a good question in the air, the kind that makes tomorrow arrive with light steps. The next morning was born silent, with the timid sun spilling golden threads over the valley. Sarah woke earlier than she intended. Her body still carried the remnant of the previous night's touch, the discreet taste of the kiss, the memory of Chloe's warmth so close. She tried to convince herself that it had been just an impulse, a beautiful mistake, but as the wind crossed the window cracks and made the curtains dance, she knew, nothing about it had been a mistake. She got up slowly, put on her robe and opened the curtains. Outside, the world seemed fresh, washed, as if it had been invented anew. The smell of coffee came from the main inn, which meant Chloe was already awake. Sarah's heart accelerated in a childish rhythm. It wasn't just desire, it was curiosity, it was the feeling of being on the verge of something important. When she went down to the garden, she found Chloe with her sleeves rolled up, serving coffee for two. Her tied-up hair left her neck exposed, and a loose strand swayed to the rhythm of the wind. The white cotton blouse clung to her skin in some places, betraying the morning's cold. "Good morning, Ryder," said Chloe, with that smile that mixed confidence and kindness. "Did you sleep?" "More than I expected," replied Sarah, trying to control her nervousness. "The silence here has a way of erasing the ghosts." "Sometimes it's the opposite," said Chloe, looking at the horizon. "Sometimes the silence makes us hear what we were trying to quiet." Sarah fell silent. That hit her like an old truth. Chloe then extended a mug. Their fingers touched again, and the world seemed to tune. There was something between them that didn't need to be named, it was enough to be there. The plan was to walk to a waterfall hidden among the hills. Chloe explained the way, but Sarah barely paid attention. She was too distracted by the sound of her voice, by the contrast between the firm tone and the delicate gaze. They walked side by side for long minutes, their boots stepping on the mud still damp from the early hours. The cold air made Sarah's face flush, and Chloe noticed. She took off her own scarf and, without thinking much, wrapped it around her neck. "This is better," she said, with a light touch on the fabric. "I don't want you to get sick." Sarah wanted to say something witty, but her voice failed. The words got stuck in her chest, along with a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. They reached the waterfall. The water fell in a curtain, forming a crystalline pool that reflected the sky. Chloe took off her coat, revealing a tight gray t-shirt, marked by water splashes. Sarah tried to look anywhere else, the shine of the water, the flight of the birds, but it was impossible not to notice the curve of her shoulders, the skin that captured the light as if it were part of the landscape. "Have you always lived here?" asked Sarah, trying to divert the focus. "I've always come back here," replied Chloe. "I've left a few times, but the wind here has a way of calling my name." "I understand that," said Sarah. "I also always go back to words, even when I want to run away from them." They stayed there, observing the flow of the water, their clothes damp with dew, the sound of the whole world breathing. Chloe bent down to touch the icy surface and, without realizing, splashed a little on Sarah. The rider let out a light scream and, before she could react, Chloe laughed, an open, sincere laugh. "Sorry, it was an accident," she said, but her gaze said otherwise. Sarah, somewhat challenging, wet the tips of her fingers and retaliated. A splash hit Chloe's arm. The game began. In seconds, they were laughing loudly, throwing water at each other like teenagers. The sound of their laughter mixed with the noise of the waterfall. When the laughter subsided, it was just the two of them, breathless, soaked, and too close. Chloe held Sarah's arm, the warm touch contrasting with the cold of the water. "I think now you'll definitely need a hot shower," she said, smiling. Sarah looked at her. And in that look there was everything, the fear, the courage, the contained desire. For a moment, time stopped. Chloe took a step forward, the distance between them disappeared. The sound of the water became distant, as if the world had erased the rest. Sarah. Chloe began, but didn't finish. Sarah raised her hand, resting it on her face. Her fingers slid to her chin, and the touch was so light it felt like a thought. Chloe closed her eyes, leaning just enough for their breaths to meet. The kiss came like a whisper, brief, precise, but full of promise. A kiss that didn't ask for permission, just said, "I'm here." When they pulled apart, both were trembling, not from the cold, but from something new, a mix of peace and vertigo. Chloe kept her gaze locked on hers, and neither of them tried to disguise what they felt. "I think the silence spoke again," said Sarah, her voice hoarse. Chloe smiled, leaning her forehead against hers. "And did you hear it?" "This time, yes." They returned in silence, the known path transformed into new territory. Every now and then, their hands touched by accident. The touch lasted long enough to remind them that something had changed. Back at the inn, Chloe lit the fireplace. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Sarah took off her coat, still wet, and was left with just a thin blouse. Chloe looked at her for a moment that was too long. The heat from the fireplace seemed to push the air between them, thick, charged. "Sit down," said Chloe. "You're still trembling." Sarah sat, and Chloe came from behind, placing a blanket over her shoulders. The gesture was simple, but the touch, the scent, the proximity, everything seemed like a confession without words. Sarah turned her face and found Chloe right there, within reach. "Chloe." "Shoo," she interrupted softly. "Don't say anything now." The silence that followed was the most intimate of all. The fire illuminated the outline of their faces, and the tension that had been growing since the first day now pulsed in the air. Sarah felt her heart accelerate, her body awake, every sense screaming to remain in that instant. Chloe took a step back, perhaps fearing she had gone too far. But Sarah's gaze stopped her. There was certainty there. There was will. "I'm not afraid," said Sarah, her voice firm. "Not anymore." Chloe approached again, slowly, until their faces touched. Their hands met halfway, and all that was left was the sound of the fire, the smell of burning wood, and two breaths mingling. The next kiss was different, deeper, more certain. It wasn't haste, it was an answer. Their hands rose naturally, tracing backs, recognizing boundaries. No rush. Just the right rhythm of someone finally allowing themselves to feel. When they pulled apart, Chloe rested her head on Sarah's shoulder and smiled against her skin. "You give me peace and take my breath away at the same time." Sarah closed her eyes, letting herself breathe with her. "I think that's what love should be." The night descended slowly, outside the rain began to fall in large drops, and inside the cabin the heat from the fireplace was almost an embrace. Neither of them wanted to say goodbye. There was much to be said, but words seemed small compared to what was already happening. The rain persisted through the night, drumming on the roof like a serene beat marking the hours. Sarah woke before dawn, her body still wrapped in the warmth of the blanket and the familiar smell of wood and lavender. The fire in the fireplace had gone out, leaving only timid embers still breathing red. On the other side of the sofa, Chloe slept with her head resting on her arm, her face half hidden by disheveled hair. Her expression was tranquil, disarmed, of a beauty that seemed born from peace itself. Sarah watched for a while, in silence, like someone trying to commit the image of an important moment to memory. There, in that isolated cabin, with the sound of the rain as a soundtrack, she understood that love does not arrive with a bang, it arrives like the dawn, slowly, pushing the darkness without hurry. When Chloe stirred, her eyes opened and found hers. The smile came spontaneously, sleepy. "What time is it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Almost 6, replied Sarah. "But you don't need to get up. It's raining outside." Chloe looked at the window, then at her. Sometimes the rain is the sky's way of asking us to stay. They both laughed, and the sound was light, complicit. Chloe got up, lit the fireplace and made coffee. The steam rose lazily, mixing with the smell of wet earth coming through the slightly open window. Sarah watched every movement, the way Chloe tied her hair, the careful way she held the mug, the way she looked at the fire as if conversing with it. Everything about her seemed to have its own rhythm, and Sarah, for the first time in a long time, had no desire to control anything. "Today is the last day of your stay, isn't it?" asked Chloe, with a tone that disguised what she really wanted to know. Sarah nodded, her heart tightening. It was supposed to be. And now? Now? I don't know. I think I don't want to go back yet. Chloe smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes. Life always calls us back, one way or another. Perhaps. Sarah took a sip of coffee, trying to avoid her gaze. But I never liked answering quickly. They spent the morning together, organizing books and firewood, laughing at small accidents, like when Chloe almost knocked over a stack of cups and Sarah held her by the waist. The touch lasted longer than necessary, and the silence that followed was so intense that neither of them wanted to break it. Chloe turned slowly, her face a few centimeters away, the smell of coffee and skin mixed. "I could get used to this," she murmured. Sarah replied in the same tone, "And if it's to get used to something, let it be something that makes the heart beat differently." The kiss that followed was sweet and firm, full of calm, but with the strength of someone who knows they are crossing a point of no return. Their hands recognized each other again, now without the shock of the first touch. The fireplace crackled, the rain thickened, and time dissolved between breaths and silent promises. Hours later, when the world outside brightened, the two were sitting near the window, wrapped in blankets, watching the fog dissipate between the mountains. Chloe rested her head on Sarah's shoulder, and the gesture seemed to say everything the words didn't know. "You know what's funny?" said Chloe, after a long time. "I always thought love was a place you go to. But I think it's simpler. Love is when someone arrives and the whole world seems to breathe in the same rhythm as you." Sarah was silent. It went through her like an ancient revelation. "And sometimes," she completed, "love is what finally makes us want to stay." The afternoon arrived, and with it, the farewell. Sarah needed to go to town to sort out her return ticket, or at least decide what to do with it. Chloe accompanied her to the road, their boots sinking into the mud. Neither of them spoke much. When the car stopped, Chloe held out something small, a green stone pendant, on a simple cord. "It was my grandmother's. She said the stone stored courage. And I think you'll need a little." Sarah held the necklace as if holding a promise. "I don't want to leave." "I know." Chloe smiled. "But sometimes we need to leave the refuge to discover we can take it with us." The hug was prolonged, the kind of hug that seems to have a beginning, a middle, and an end that doesn't come. When Sarah got into the car, the rain started again, fine, almost transparent. Chloe stood there, watching the car move away down the road, until it disappeared among the trees. Days later, Sarah was in a cafe in Queenstown, her laptop open in front of her. The words flowed as they hadn't for months. She wrote about a woman who hid in the mountains and found another who taught her to listen to the silence. Each sentence came out with the taste of coffee and memory. From time to time, she touched the pendant on her neck, and a smile escaped. When she finished the last paragraph, she got up and walked to the window. The sky was clear, the lake reflected the exact blue of where she had learned to breathe again. She picked up her phone, typed a short and simple message. "The mountain still keeps what we entrusted to it. But some things, I think I want to retrieve." Minutes later, the reply came. "Then come. The coffee is on." Sarah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and felt a different peace, the kind that comes not from running away, but from allowing oneself. She sat down again, saved the document with the title, The Mountain Refuge, and realized that, in a way, the story she was writing was the same one she was now living. The wind blew through the open window, bringing the smell of the distant forest. Her heart, once made of haste and pain, now beat in a new rhythm, the same rhythm she had found in Chloe's footsteps. Back at the cabin, the familiar sound of tires on the road made Chloe look up. The mist still covered part of the valley, but she recognized the car. The same one. The smile that escaped was calm, almost from someone who always knew that was the outcome. Sarah got out, her hair loose, her face lighter. Chloe said nothing. She just opened her arms. This time, the hug was not a farewell. It was a beginning. Sarah felt that, for the first time, the world was no longer divided between what she had lost and what she was still seeking. Now, everything was there, the past, the present, the future, condensed in the quietness of a gaze that said, "You have arrived." Chloe kissed her forehead, and time, for an instant, ceased to exist. There, between the distant sound of the river and the scent of wet earth, two women found what everyone seeks and few have the courage to live, the love that is born when fear ends. And if there is a lesson in this story, it is that the refuge we seek is never in a distant place, it lives in the people who make the world feel like home again. Sarah and Chloe, each with their scars, had learned that love is not the end of pain, but the beginning of healing. And as the sun hid behind the mountains, they understood, in silence, that sometimes a single look is enough to know that destiny has finally fulfilled its promise. And as the sun hid behind the mountains, they understood, in silence, that sometimes a single look is enough to know that destiny has finally fulfilled its promise. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel's Secret Garden Stories, leave a comment saying which moment moved you the most, and share this video with someone who believes that true love can begin in the most unexpected places.